You don't want to be the subject of office gossip and drama, but you're probably talking about things that are inserting you into those bad office politics without even realizing it, causing you to not be taken seriously by your boss or coworkers and hurting your career. In this video, I'm going to share what those things are and how you can avoid them. The first thing you should never tell your coworkers is your career ambitions. If you want to be promoted, keep it to yourself. This is a mistake that Kristen made. She wanted a promotion and everyone knew about it. You would think this wouldn't be problematic, and Kristen assumed her coworkers would want to help her. While that was true for most of her coworkers who were advocates for her, she had a couple of coworkers who now viewed her as competition, going after the promotion they wanted. This caused all sorts of headaches that Kristen did not want to deal with. One of these coworkers started to actively sabotage her, undermining her ideas in meetings, withholding information she needed to do her work, and even bad-mouthing her to their boss. This coworker also started gossiping about her. Essentially what this coworker did was they leveraged every available bad office politic and strategy, and it made going to work a nightmare for Kristen. This is not a situation you want to deal with, so how can you avoid it? I will always be an advocate for being unapologetically ambitious, but admit that ambition to the right people. Specifically, the people that are going to help you achieve your career goals. This is exactly what your network of advocates is for. Instead of telling everybody about your promotion ambitions, talk about that ambition to the people that are going to help you achieve that career advancement. Your network of advocates is going to support you. They are going to advocate for you in the rooms where you're not in. They will help you amplify your impact, or they may be the people that are actually creating career opportunities for you or making those promotion decisions. And if you don't have a network of advocates and you don't really know where to start, pre-ordering my book Career Glow Up is a great place to start because I have a whole chapter on network of advocates, helping you identify who should be in it and cultivating those relationships. It's at careerglowupbook.com. Ideally, your boss is going to be in your network of advocates and is actively trying to help you achieve the career success you're trying to build for yourself, which actually brings me to the second thing you should never tell your coworkers. And that is things that your boss tells you. What could go wrong? Well, we need to look at Vivian's story to find out. Vivian had established fantastic career trajectory and a great reputation amongst the leaders at her company. Most specifically, her boss, who happened to be one of the senior leaders. And her boss trusted her, shared insights, even talked about future directions and things that they were thinking about. Vivian really wanted to be seen as someone who was in the know, and sometimes she would share those things that she learned from her boss. This was typically harmless. Most of these were top secrets. However, one day, Vivian made the mistake of sharing the wrong thing. Vivian shared something that her boss had told her in confidence, and of course it got back to her manager, which had catastrophic impact on their relationship and her career at that company. First of all, her boss shut her out. The damage this caused had ripple effects as well. Both her role and her influence at the company were seriously downgraded. She was no longer someone in the know, she was someone who had been marginalized by senior leadership because she couldn't be trusted. She was eventually pushed out of the company and left a legacy of being a dire warning of what not to do at work. Which brings us to how can you avoid this? Because at the same time, you don't want to be a gatekeeper. Not everything your boss tells you should go in the vault. What's important here is discernment and identifying the information that should be distributed, shared, and talked about from the conversations that require a bit more discretion. If Vivian had used better judgment in what she was sharing, not only would she have maintained the trust with her manager, her career trajectory likely would have continued to accelerate. Alternatively, instead of sharing the information, Vivian could have began creating aligned impact and influence in the organization. And that actually leads me to a really cringe story. Like, honestly, I'll probably be able to feel you cringing across the computer screen at this one. And our third thing that we should not talk to our coworkers about: airing our grievances with our coworkers. Have you ever worked with someone who complained all the time? Let me know in the comments what you thought about them. And as you do that, let me tell you about Ashley. Ashley had a bad boss. Okay, no, not a bad boss. A nightmare boss. A boss who was so bad, many of her coworkers were complaining about them, and she joined in. Eventually, complaining about the boss became something that she bonded with her coworkers about. It was the thing that they talked about. Until one day, her boss heard about it. Side note here, I need you to remember that there are many ways for people to overhear your conversations at work, other than physically overhearing them. Whether it's in recorded meetings, employee monitoring software, or just having access to your Slack or Teams messages. Anything that you communicate out at work or on a work device is something that you can assume your boss is going to hear about. Of course, Ashley's boss, knowing that she was actively complaining about them, didn't do anything to help their relationship or her toxic work environment. What could Ashley have done differently that you can learn from? Complaining and airing your grievances is sometimes necessary, but you need to do it in a controlled way. First, keep your complaints close. You can trust your work bestie. You can trust your friends and family you don't work with. Don't trust your random coworker who's hitting you up on Slack. In those instances in which you're complaining, keep in mind what I just mentioned. Anything that you're typing into your work computer or talking about at work can be things that are physically or digitally overheard. So keep it to personal devices, bestie. When you're in a situation where you're constantly complaining, you might realize that it's time to find another job, which leads us directly to the fourth thing you should never tell your coworkers: that you're looking for another job. This doesn't even have to be something you are overtly doing. For example, Pauline thought she had a stealth job search going on. Sure, she was taking the occasional Zoom interview and occasionally cruising job postings on her break. And one day, one of her coworkers found out, and it wasn't a friendly coworker, and her boss found out she was looking. While some bosses may be very supportive, I've even heard from some of you where you're trying to escape a toxic work environment and your manager is encouraging you to do so because they're trying to do the same thing. This won't always be the situation. If you're looking for another job and your boss finds out, they might think that you're disloyal, which is really hypocritical when you think about job stability and company loyalty these days. However, I digress. Worst case scenario, your boss is going to retaliate and you'll be able to look for that new job full time, which is cool if you have the resources to do it, not so cool without. However, this can have subtler impacts on your career. For instance, your boss could divest in your professional growth. They're not going to give you career advancing opportunities when they think you're going to jump ship. It could even impact the amount and quality of the work that you're being given by your manager. So what can you do instead? Make sure that when you're in a job search, unless you're in one of those situations where your boss is going to be very supportive, make sure that you are keeping it on the down low. Keeping in mind what I just mentioned, the fact that your boss might be able to spy on you at work, keep your job search to your personal devices. Whenever possible, take phone interviews and Zoom interviews off of company premises, and definitely not on your company computer. And of course, don't tell your coworkers you're looking for another job. Even if you tell them to keep it a secret, expect it's not going to be kept secret for very long. Which brings me to the fifth thing you should never tell your coworkers. And this is one of the biggest mistakes I see ambitious professionals make. Do not share overly personal information about yourself with your coworkers. This one can be really obvious, like a coworker who constantly talks about conspiracy theories. So awkward. Oftentimes though, it's going to be much more subtle and an easy mistake at work to make. For instance, one of my former clients, Emily, made the mistake of oversharing with coworkers. Emily was friends with all of her coworkers. Well, she thought she was. Since they were friends, she talked openly about things that were stressing her out in her personal life, like fights with her boyfriend and her credit card debt. These topics were not problematic with the coworkers she had truly befriended, but it did cause backstabbing and gossip with coworkers who were not her friends. It even led to one coworker sabotaging her to her boss, using details about her life she had willingly shared. It was not a good look for her, and it was not a good situation. How can you avoid the mistake that Emily made at work? First, I really encourage you to rethink relationships at work. Can coworkers become friends that are lifelong? Yes, of course they can. But we need to remember they're the exception and not the rule, and most of your coworkers are not friends. This can be incredibly nuanced. So I want you to go and watch this video right now so we can talk more about friendships at work.